Hello, friends. A deep-seated fear for most people, whether rational or irrational, is running out of money. With no one immune, saving shortfalls and cash flow concerns can impact any of us at all levels of income. We've seen this with successful celebrities like Johnny Depp, Michael Jackson, Larry King, and oh yes, Charlie Sheen, Nicolas Cage, Brendan Fraser. Then there's Pamela Anderson, Stephen Baldwin, of course, Donald Trump, Mike Tyson, Michael Vick, Kurt Schilling, the list goes on and on. Unfortunately, most people have no idea how much and where they spend. Cash flow planning and budgeting puts a goals-based person in the driver's seat on a road to purposeful spending over impulsive distractions. Budgeting is not about feelings of scarcity coupled with an overly frugal lifestyle. It's about conscious, purposeful spending so we reach our goals and dreams as opposed to squandering opportunities on impulsive distractions along the way. Welcome to this Cash Flow Planning Table Talk. It's the first of 8 table talks on financial wellness. In each, other financial experts and I will share powerful financial tips and actionable recommendations on a different personal finance topic to help you achieve and grow your financial independence. Today, weighing in on cash flow planning is me, Paula McMillan, founder and chair of Plenteous Financial Forum and a senior financial advisor with Stearns Financial Group. Keith Hyatt, partner at Breslow Starling, and Nancy McCrae, controller at Sherrard McGee. Financial executive Annie Schaefer will be tracking and sharing questions that you may have today, so let us know what you're thinking in the chat. Keith, please start us off by telling us how you feel about the role life goals play in cash flow planning.
Critical, and the more clear you can make those goals, the better. One of the questions I like asking people is, 3 years from now, 5 years, pick a date, 10 years from now, what has to happen for you to be happy with your progress? In other words, what has to help you be happy with what you've done? And the more specific they can be about what will allow them to be happy or to be confident that they've done what they needed to do, whether it's retirement, whether it's their family, their children, whether it's established in a certain fund or that type of thing, the more clear they are on that, the more clear they're going to be with their specific goals today that help them get there.
There are numerous studies regarding the psychology behind written goals, contributing to the likelihood of actual success and positive outcomes. So yes, there is power in defining and writing down your goals, whether they're personal or professional. So for me personally, I believe in a specific written plan that's reviewed regularly is the best way to achieve a goal.
Keith and Nancy, thank you. Keith's point about clear goals reminds me of a young professional couple who wanted to retire within 5 years at age 45. They also shared a desire to put their children in private school and buy a house in a specific neighborhood. For most people, these would be very lofty goals, especially at their age, but because of their investments and strong compensation, it was within the realm of possibility for them. However, after accounting for taxes, inflation, and market volatility, their plan projected they would be broke at age 85. And now, after considering more scenarios, reflecting on different compromises, their goals ended up flipping in order of importance to them. It's not uncommon to end up in a completely different place than where you start when going through planning, especially for couples. Like most people who go through the effort to really plan, they came out on the other side more convicted with a clear vision and path to achieve what was important to them. This conviction or desire to achieve specific goals is truly a critical driver in whether a person decides to embark on and stick to cash flow planning. Now, after setting motivating, realistic goals, what budgeting systems or processes have you found effective in helping people like this couple with tracking their budget to be sure they stay on course?
Have them do first if they're totally kind of clueless, so to speak, or uncertain. I have them do a reverse budget. Have them look back over the last 3-4 months. I say, okay, write down what you spent the last 6 months and where you spent it and the categories you spent it in, And that'll give me the best perspective about what you're actually spending on and how much you're spending on food each month, eating out, entertainment, whatever the parameters are. And let's lay all that out. And that reverse budget will give me a real broader, better, real detailed perspective on where they are and what they need to do going forward. I mean, they'll be surprised. They'll be surprised by some things that they didn't even realize they were spending money on.
I agree, Keith. I don't think there's really a best system or one size fits all. But I do think the key is being prepared for obstacles that can happen along the way, because we all know our best laid plans don't always come to fruition the way we'd like for them to, and in the timely manner that we think that they're going to happen. But I do think one of the things that's really key is the emergency savings plan. And I'm going to go back to that even more so than the budget piece right now, because having those reserves, and there's been a lot of studies out there that people don't even have $400 or $500 to cover, a car repair or a medical bill or something like that. So starting small and building that little bit of reserve, and then focusing on the 3 to 6 month job loss type of situation, and then building a budget based on that once you have some reserves. I think that's critical.
The emergency fund is a great point, Nancy. I find a good rule of thumb for how much you should have in an emergency fund is 6 months of expenses if you have one significant income stream coming into the household, and 3 months if you have 2 or more. Of course, in extraordinary times like a pandemic, where there's so many job losses and uncertainty, it might be a good idea to consider a little more, depending on your personal situation. What are your thoughts on that, Nancy?
I believe financial stress is a heavy burden that a lot of people carry, particularly during this COVID crisis. People have lost jobs, or at least lost one income, and I think that they're realizing the power of saving and what that means. Mm-hmm. And so people often don't have reserves to carry them through difficult times, and I think that as a result, people make poor decisions when it comes to borrowing choices. They turn to a credit card to finance something along the way that is not planned. And they often borrow from their retirement savings, which is not a good solution either.
Yeah, I found that the people who I've had do reverse budgets, 9 out of 10 of them come back to me and said, they'll always say, I didn't realize I was spending money on X. There's always something they discover that they just didn't even realize. It was one of those automatic kind of don't think about, or they didn't realize they were spending that much on a certain area. It's a great exercise because it's really self-revealing. It tells you a lot.
It does tell you a lot, and I think you find maybe where you might have some, I'll call them quote unquote bad habits when it comes to spending, or what are attached to spending. And so if you're truly honest with yourself and know what's coming in and going out and how that can play a significant role in your planning, that's key. And thinking about how am I spending today, and not can I cover it next week or next month when the next check comes in, but really looking short term and saying, can I really afford that purchase right now with what I have left for this week or this pay period, and not getting outside of that box.
So as I mentioned before, most people really don't have any idea how much and where they spend. And it's no wonder with the sophisticated predictive analytics pros at most retailers today. They mine and buy key information about each of us personally through the cards we swipe, phone numbers we offer, registries we enter, and more. On top of this, think of all of the unemotional ways made possible for us to part with our money with ease today. There's online billing, auto bill pay, annual auto renewal, PayPal, credit cards, debit cards, Venmo, handwritten checks. With this complex system of money transfers, Recognizing that there are different approaches that appeal to and work for different people, what are some of the different systems you found to work for tracking these expenses? And is there a particular type of person they work best for?
It's a great thought, Paula. If, you know, the saying, if you don't control what you spend, others will, or at least they'll try to.
Mm-hmm.
Try to control what your budget is, your line item in your budget is. They're very good at marketing. They're very good at selling and knowing what you're spending money on and what your habits are. So I go back to the idea of, you know, having a written plan. The idea of a budget sometimes for some people is a bad word, but it's a necessity these days. You need to have some type of plan, budget in place to track what you're spending and why.
Absolutely. These small changes can have a dramatic impact over time. For example, in financial planning, you want to make it to age 100 without running out of money, given people are living longer today. Hey, we've added 10 years onto life expectancy since the 1960s. In cases where a plan does not achieve that, you can calculate and suggest an amount a person would need to reduce expenses biannually to get back on track to keep them from running out of money. To this same point, most people have some enlightening aha moments in putting together their initial budget. They find interesting areas of leakage that add up that they really didn't even know anything about that would have really compounded over time. In fact, I've seen many cases where looking at these expenses over time has helped disagreeing couples come to a quick agreement on some highly charged emotional decisions. For example, I had a couple where the wife wanted a vacation home and her husband did not. When I showed her that they would have to decrease expenses by $7,000 annually, or her work 2 years longer to have the same asset level at age 100, she stopped sending her husband listings of mountain cabins. She had not previously realized that the cost in those terms, and she had that quickly determined that it was not worth that to her. Providing the financial texture helped them put the issue to bed quickly and ease the related tension that had built up. What have you found to be helpful tips for couples or individuals to stay the course and stay positive and proactive in planning and budgeting?
About the two of you, but I've found also that whether you have a lot of money or a little money, there's always issues about how it's spent, and it is about philosophy and how people feel about the spending and the saving portion of it. So there's always going to be a difference. You could be a millionaire and your spouse and you are not going to agree on how those funds are spent.
I like what I've seen a couple of couples do is they have the thermometer on the refrigerator that says, you know, hey, we're going on vacation and here's how much we've got saved, and that thermometer goes up or down depending on how well they are doing and whatever it might be. Paid off, vacation, savings, whatever it is, but making it visual and so that they're on the same team as opposed to it's you and me against each other kind of thing.
What are some different tracking methods, whether it's online tracking apps, ledger paper, Excel spreadsheets, cash envelopes that you found to work? And are they better for a particular type of person?
My parents were definitely the cash in the envelope people, but it was cash basis. And so you cashed your check, you went to the bank, you cashed your check. You even probably went to town hall at some point and paid your utility bill and things like that. I can remember my grandmother doing those things. And unless you're in a cash-based business, like maybe receiving cash tips or something like that, or being paid in cash as a self-employed individual, we really don't deal in cash that much anymore. So for me personally, I like the Excel spreadsheet. That's probably the accountant in me too, being able to see everything and track everything that way. But I think you have to try different things to see what's right for you personally, and it may take a while. Just even like organizational methods, sometimes you have to try a few things before you get it just right. But I would suggest starting with your bank. There's so many apps available now through the banking institution that you work with, and they're tied to your checking account, and they can give reports about your spending, like Keith was saying. And a lot of it's just a download, and you can sort and do things, and also, you know, figure out ways to save with that as well. They have savings account features and automatic features built into their products. So I would start with a bank if you don't have anything already.
I agree with Nancy. That's a great suggestion. I would lean toward the Excel spreadsheet too, but that's the accountant in me, I guess, you know. But it's like when people ask me, Keith, how do I best keep track of my tax information? I said, well, it's the system that you're going to use. You know, bottom line, it's whatever I tell you. I can tell you about the bank apps, the Excel spreadsheet, online tracking. There's some wonderful apps that you can get on your phone, envelopes. I think it's a personality thing of really find out what are you going to use ongoing for not just today, but for the next 6 months, 6 years.
Yeah.
Are you a visual learner? You know, do you like to see things visually? I do. And so I like to track things and see things. When I mentioned the thermometer on the refrigerator, I like to see things that are visual that help me to see where I am. So part of that's they fall down when you just kind of do them and leave them on a shelf, I guess, you know, and think, well, I'm done, and I don't ever look at it again.
Consistency too is key. Regardless of how small the savings is, it could be, you know, just simply $5 a week, but it's something. And I think just sticking to the something is better than nothing. So as long as you're participating in your plan and trying to be diligent about what you're doing, I think that's really helpful. And there's that sense of accomplishment.
I think I like Nancy's idea about do little things first, like a savings, have emergency savings. I really like that idea of having them do a small thing first and have a success at building up a fund or, you know, taking a small step at a time. Don't feel like you've got to be this, you know, cash flow wizard on day one. Take it a step at a time, a day at a time, and conquer little things, you know, slowly but surely.
As mentioned earlier, many high-profile people with seemingly endless income streams have had saving shortfalls and cash flow concerns. Why do you think people overspend?
One reason is they simply don't know, they don't have a budget. They're not tracking what they're spending, so they have no idea. And end of the month, end of the year, they've overspent because they simply haven't paid attention.
I think there's a lot of money leakage, if you will. We have, you know, memberships and streaming. I look at my children in particular, and the money they spend just on TV entertainment. Sometimes it drives me a little crazy because why do you need Netflix and Hulu and YouTube and, you know, on and on. But one of the things I've tried to teach them is that don't look at it as, oh, it's only $10 a month. It's only $7 a month. How about how much it is times 12? And do you really want to spend that for the year on something? And so, and of course, there's emotional spending too. We all get into that. Sometimes you get caught up into the newness of something. So it's really being in tune with yourself.
That you're right. I mean, this thought came to my mind, Nancy, that no wonder they have you sign up for automatic draft.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Automatic credit card, automatic draft. I mean, if they can get you to sign up for that, they've got you for life, right? It's going to be automatically renewed. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. And some of those things, if you go on their websites and try to or disenroll or whatever you want to call it, it's very hard to find the checkbox to get out of that.
Yeah. See, along those same lines is the client who comes into me in this environment of low interest rates and says, Keith, I just refinanced my home mortgage. I said, that's great. You got a lower interest rate, and now my monthly payment's less. I said, well, wait. What are you going to do with that extra money? Why not pay the same amount monthly on your mortgage, or have that extra money go to pay down a credit card debt, or use, what are you going to do with that extra money now? I mean, it's wonderful you've got a lower interest rate and you've got a lower monthly payment. So when you talk about leakage, and why does leakage, sometimes we get that lower payment and all of a sudden we think, or when they get an increase in their pay, I tell them, the first place I want to tell them is, did you increase your 401k contribution?
Absolutely.
Did you increase your retirement plan? So don't give all that money's great. That's wonderful. Your paycheck just went up by $100. Where's it going?
These are our younger staff coming in when they first enter our 401k plan. I always try to guide them that when you get a raise, think about at least going up 1% each year. And before you know it, you're at 10%, Mm-hmm. So it's, again, those small steps that we were talking about earlier, that it doesn't have to be a 10% increase or a 5% even, but just the 0.5%, 1%, $5 here, $10 there, it really goes a long way.
I mean, I think controlling your emotions, I know you know this, Paula, but the investor who wants to make the million today, you say, no, that's not how you get to $1 million. You get to $1 million by $25 a month in a good fund, and you do it for 20 years. And that's what it is. That's what Nancy just said, is you get people to do a little bit every month and increase it as they're able to. That's how they get to it. And I think, unfortunately, the media sometimes portrays the person who's made all this money as though it just happened. The sweepstakes, chances of being struck by lightning are probably greater than winning, the lottery. Isn't that what they say?
Very true.
Yes.
Where do you find people leak money?
It's not just going to the coffee shop every day. There's big purchases being made that we're just squandering, hard-earned money that we should not be.
Yeah, I agree with you. The leakage happens because we don't know about it, and we haven't looked at really been honest with ourselves about what we're actually spending money on now. And it also occurs when we get what I call newfound money, whether it's a pay increase, refinance, some expense goes down, an inheritance, or whatever. It's newfound money. How do we spend it? Do we, would you just kind of fiddle it away, or do we kind of say, no, I'm going to put it aside for certain specific things?
A storage unit issue. In fact, in my own family with my niece, she had to move back home with her mom, my sister, and puts all of her stuff in storage. Well, she's spending, who knows, $60, $70 a month. I think it's probably more than that on storage for stuff that she could replace. She would have been better off, getting rid of it and buying new versus spending it on storage. And in all honesty, the break even is long gone on the storage building. But we're attached to our stuff too. It's not just the emotional spend, but we're attached to our belongings also. And sometimes parting with things is difficult too. So we store them. That's why you see these mini storage places all over,
Just going to say that they're everywhere. Yes, they're everywhere you go. They're building a storage unit.
And you see garages with the doors down and the cars outside because they need more storage.
Right.
What are some of the complexities children, whether small or adult, can add to cash flow planning?
It goes, you mentioned adult children is also, how do we deal with adult children and the responsibility we feel they need to take for their, their funds and their, that's an important thing too. And our emotions are tied up into that, really. We want to, we got to be careful about not making sure that they learn financial ups and downs as well that we learned. And if we, keep them from learning those experiences, we maybe think we're protecting them, but we're not. So that's important.
I agree with you, Keith. One of the things that I did when my boys were going through college is yes, we did pay for a large portion of their school, but I also made them take out a student loan each year because I felt like they needed skin in the game. And just knowing that they had that commitment, number one, to finish, number two, to pay back that loan, um, I felt like that was a very valuable lesson. And in fact, my youngest one has surpassed my older one and paid off his debt already. So I'm very proud of him. Not that the other one's not working on it, but I think both of them recognized how important their education was also as a result of that. That's why I said I call it skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful training. It reminds me of when my daughters had summer jobs. I would put money away in a Roth IRA for them, and it wasn't a lot, but they still have them to this day. And of course, I told them they can't touch them,
Right.
But the key is that by helping them to see the power of finance and what you can do, even on a small scale, that's the best way to teach them, I think, is to help them be involved and really, like you said, have skin in the game, whether it be a loan, whether it be an investment, where they have funds that they have to manage. I think it's a good way to go.
I was kind of the mean mom too when they were younger. We never lived near a family, so birthdays were usually checks, and I made them put all their checks in the bank. So I would give them a little cash on the side, but I made them put all their checks in their savings account.
And you told them the tax on that check was a really high number.
What do you feel are some helpful debt reduction strategies?
Paying down the smallest, I know there's different philosophies, but I think getting rid of the smallest one first and having that sense of accomplishment for sure keeps you going in a positive direction with paying down debt. The key really is to live within your means. And so if you have a lot of credit card debt, you just have to stop putting things on a credit card, period. And if you do, you need to turn around within 24 hours and transfer that money and get it paid. But don't be making a minimum payment and then increasing your debt each month. That's not getting you anywhere.
I agree. I've seen people who maybe refinance, or, you get these free transfers, one credit card to the other. And I say, well, great. Get the lower interest rate is wonderful, but don't increase the debt. I mean, don't refinance your debt. I mean, that's the opposite of what you want to do. But I like, going back to the beginning, Nancy, I like your strategy too about making sure they have an emergency cash fund, that so that they're paying down debt, but at the same time, they're not getting further in debt. So if the car needs a new set of tires, they're not putting it on the credit card. They already have an emergency fund that they built up to pay for those unknown emergency type items as well.
I think it makes us be more intentional, and it does force us to start planning or think about planning ahead. Just like you mentioned tires, instead of being reactive, you're proactive about that. 6 months down the road or a year down the road, you need to start thinking about those things. You have something major coming up, maybe you need dental work and you try to plan that out. And so you're not constantly reacting to something being thrown into your life. You're planning ahead and being able to be prepared for those financial challenges that you could possibly be facing. I think people get caught up with low interest credit cards at first. And so then all of a sudden they have 4 or 5 credit cards and they're only paying the minimum payment on each one of them. And again, spending because they think it's 0% for so long. The marketing aspect, you see it with furniture all the time. Rooms to Go is famous for that. I'm not trying to call them out, but we see it on TV all the time. You've got 5 years to pay off this furniture. Well, by then you're ready for new.
Where are some areas you find you're often crunching numbers to arrive at a better decision?
And apps and spreadsheets that are available for decisions about whether to buy or rent. People always asking me, should I lease a car? Should I buy a car? Should I take out a loan? How should I do it? Should I do a Roth conversion? What tax strategies make sense for me? I mean, those are all questions that I think that my answer is, well, let's run the numbers. Let's actually put them on a spreadsheet. Let's actually put them in an app or a program and run some numbers and show you, the pros and cons of both and the actual numbers, because sometimes the answer is not readily apparent. It's not clear cut. So it's better to see the numbers first before you decide.
Too, depending upon your situation and how stable jobs are, really focusing on, can we do some of these things on one income if something were to happen, and not always living with that two-person income and above. And I know that's really hard in this day and time, but it can be done for sure. And just really being, like I said, very intentional about your focus and what you're trying to accomplish. I think people too also get, they're a little bit scared of money. I think the investing side, the savings side, making it grow, they don't know what to do with it, how to approach that. And so people like Paula for sure are very helpful with the financial planning aspect. But even your 401k plans, most of those platforms, your record keepers have built-in advisory platforms where you can get a sense of what you do need to be doing for saving and putting in everything that you currently have, all of your assets, and just kind of doing a number crunching game there with, are you on track or aren't you? And getting an idea of what type of investor you are also. If you're a risk taker or you're more conservative, and that all plays into it too.
As discussed earlier, most people are afraid of running out of money at some level. While money management can often be difficult during our working years, we have to layer on planning ahead for 30 years of retirement when the paychecks stop coming, but inflation, taxes, and market ups and downs continue at a time when most are pulling money out of savings for living expenses. What specific tips do you have for people going through transitions like retirement, divorce, perhaps losing a spouse?
For a surviving spouse where her husband just passed away, one of my most important tips is slow down. Do not make any quick decisions. There is no need to make any decisions right away. In fact, you may make the wrong decision. People may influence you to do things that you really will regret. So I'd say take your time. There's no need to rush. For people who, are looking at a job transition or a retirement or a long-term thing, one of the planning ideas I really think is powerful is take out the spreadsheet. Nancy and I like spreadsheets. But spreadsheets,
Me too.
Yeah, everyone likes spreadsheets, right? Do a 10-year projection or longer of what kind of income do you need over the next 10 years annually, and where is it going to come from? And as a tax person, I want to know that, because I don't want peaks and valleys in your income. I don't want one year where you're taking a lot of money out of a retirement plan and paying a lot of tax, and the next year you're not. You're in a low bracket. So I want to look at the next 10 years, in terms of what kind of income you need, and where's it going to come from?
I definitely think too, when you were mentioning, about a transition, possibly a death or a divorce, how important it is for both people to understand where their finances, what's happening with their finances, where they are financially. And so often, and I know Keith sees this a lot, and Paula, that there's one spouse that really is clueless as to what has been going on, because one person is always handling it. And it's not the trust factor, it's just needing to understand what's going on.
We've covered a lot of ground about cash flow planning and budgeting today. I'm curious, Annie, what kind of questions have we received from participants?
Here's one question. Nancy, Keith, or Paula, what are some good ways to get a spouse on board with more intentional spending without always seeming like the bad guy?
I think uncovering what your personal philosophy is and your priorities and goals, each individually related to spending and saving, and then trying to figure out a way to prioritize those and work them into your plan as a team, as a married couple. So that, because there's always going to be one person who feels left out, obviously, so you've got to negotiate and figure out how to achieve both sides, because there really isn't any one side that's more right than the other when it comes to that.
I just believe it's helpful if both take an active role in the process so that no one's put in the position of being budget cop. We all know that money can unfortunately get in the way of a couple's happiness together. My father's primary piece of advice when I married was always expect to give more than you receive. I believe this applies when it comes to feelings that people have about money within couples. Taking the time to understand all of the emotions and layers that are wrapped into our individual perceptions about money that influence our spending and sometimes our views on ourselves and others is so important. Coming to an agreement about spending with empathy is truly helpful. After all, money is there for security and enjoyment. We have to be sure that we have the right balance of the two. Agreeing on goals and a budget ahead of time is key.
I agree. I agree. And I like the idea both of you kind of alluded to, was the fact that the more clear you could make the goal, it's our goal, it's not your goal or my goal. Is we can agree on where we want to be, then we're working together, as opposed to you're spending too much money and you're doing this wrong. I mean, it's not you, it's us. And I think that's important.
One of the things I always think about is vehicle purchases and the philosophy. You know, usually each person has a different philosophy on that. One wants to buy a car and hang on to it till the wheels fall off, and then the other one wants to trade it every, 3 or 4 years. So maybe the person who wants to trade more frequently, you figure out a way, well, what's the benefit of not doing that? We really want to go on vacation, or we really want to buy this. So in order to do that, you've got to hang on to your car an extra year or two or something. But that's where the negotiation piece comes in, the trade-offs.
Are you good for another question? All right. Okay, here's another question. Could you give some tips for inexpensive ways to entertain or have fun with your friends?
I think one place people overlook is the public library for renting movies or borrowing movies. And so you could have a movie night, but you don't even have to pay for that. You could go and take out a movie from the library. So
I truly believe the best things in life are free. My husband and I have one child, a 14-year-old son. As a result, we end up doing a lot of things a 14-year-old boy would do. We spend most of our free time outdoors. We do a lot of biking, running, kayaking. Sometimes it's just kicking a soccer ball around the yard to catch up on what happened that day. So these things are not very expensive at all. In fact, you can rent a kayak for about $15 at the local park. So that we find also gives us a lot of endorphins. We feel good. And so anytime you can spend family time outdoors and exercising just feels really positive. I know a lot of people plan to see all of the national parks on their vacations. They plan vacations around that. So they're doing a lot of physical activities outside on vacation, and those are not very expensive, just traveling there when you're able. There's not a pandemic going on. And then with friends, I tend to enjoy book clubs and other professional organizations that I'm involved in with friends. And they're not that costly for what you get from them. I know with friends, many times it'll be something that involves wine. And I've actually even said, hey, why don't we go on a walk instead of going out and grabbing dinner and a glass of wine. So I've really enjoyed that. And you can also arrange maybe going out to breakfast or coffee instead of dinner. You can have movie night with popcorn when, again, you're able and the pandemic is not as big of a concern. And there are all kinds of other things like playing cards that people do that don't cost anything. So it's just, you're only limited by your creativity.
How would you suggest involving children in better planning your spending to pass on good money management habits to them?
I know people have different philosophies about allowances, giving your child an allowance, but my experience has been that's a great way to teach your child how to think about spending versus saving, and saving being the goal oriented and spending being, I don't know, immediate gratification per se. I got money and it's burning a hole in my pocket mentality. And so teaching them how to think about their purchase, sitting back maybe 24 hours and thinking, is this still as important as I thought it was? Video games were always a big thing that my boys wanted to spend their money on. So I would honestly make them think about that, because a $40, $50 video game, it takes a while to save up for that. And then is that really what you want to spend it on?
I like that. And I like, Nancy, your comments early on about how you involve your children in knowing the financial, what we're spending money. You don't have to go into specifics, but
Right.
things cost money and that they're things. And I have heard some parents too also for earnings matching their children's savings. In other words, put $1 away in savings, I'll match that amount or something to entice them to see the power of setting money aside and not spending it all.
Thinking about how to stretch your dollars too. I can remember my mom saying to me, do you really want that $30 or $40 sweater when you can buy two for 15 or 20? Think about the bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Looking back too, I mean, my children now are kind of, a little bit grown up and adults almost, but they say our example. I mean, we didn't just the example, and then like my parents, same thing, but how they spent money and the lifestyle and how they chose to do things, it definitely has an impact.
So Keith Hyatt, Nancy McCray, Annie Schaefer, and I, Paula McMillan, thank you for joining us today to discuss cash flow planning, the first table talk in the Financial Wellness series. In the notes below, we've also included a link to 5 simple steps to creating a budget that actually works, a guide designed to help you jumpstart your cash flow planning efforts. There you can also register for the next table talk in the series, Tax Planning, on August 20th at 3 o'clock to learn tax savings tips and ideas you need to know. My best to you and yours, always, my friends. Stay safe, stay well.